Alright everyone, welcome back to Mike Does Things. This is episode 2 on the channel, if you don't count the weather videos. Today we are back in the garage, but this time not for a workout, but for more garage related things, which is doing an oil change on my vehicle. So my goal for this video is to obviously do the oil change, teach you guys something hopefully you didn't know. If you do know everything that there is to know about doing an oil change, then just sit back, relax, enjoy the content. Whatever you may be doing while you're watching this on the toilet, maybe. That's where I spend most of my time watching YouTube. TMI, I know, but it is what it is. So a little bit about the vehicle. We'll get into the oil, some of the parts and tools that I'm using, and then we'll actually get up under and start the change. So, like I said, this is a 2013 Toyota Corolla. Right now it has 210,000 miles on the clock. I've been driving it primarily since it had like 80 or 90,000 miles. So put a lot of miles on it, done a lot of maintenance on it, mostly preventative maintenance, thankfully. Things like oil change, changing out fluids, changing brakes, whatnot. It is a Toyota, so it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. And the things that it does need, generally speaking, it's easy to perform. So an example of something that I had to change about a year ago that was not preventative was the ignition coils. I started getting a misfire, so figured out it was the coils, not the spark plugs. And those are just as simple as undoing a screw, popping them out, put the new ones in, tightening that screw, and then you're done. So just an example of something that could go wrong, but is an easy fix because it's a Toyota. So what are we using today for oil and oil filter? So for my oil, we have 0W20 is the weight that this engine requires. We'll talk about weight here in a minute. It's Mobile One brand, just something that you can get at AutoZone, O'Reilly's, whatever auto parts store you prefer. This is advanced fuel economy. This is the stuff that I've been using for the 100 and some odd thousand miles that I've been driving the vehicle. The car seems to like it. I haven't had any issues with it. It stays pretty clean. It cools the engine well. And it comes in 5 quarts, which is really convenient because the engine holds 4 quarts, which means every 4 oil changes, I have basically a free oil change because all I have to do is pay for the filter at that point. Because as you can see, I have a leftover jug with 2 quarts already in it. Beyond that, we have our oil filter. For vehicles like this, it is really just as simple as a little kind of paper cartridge filter. There's a housing on the car that you open up, pop the old filter out, put the new one in, close that housing. A little bit different from something that you might see on a truck or other bigger vehicles, which is this. This came off my 06 Duramax whenever I bought it and did that change. You can see it's its own self-contained unit, so it really just is as simple as screwing the old one off, screwing the old one on, you change your oil filter. Other tools that we're going to need for this is either a 14mm wrench or socket. My ratchet is currently in the truck, so I don't have that in front of me, but here's the socket for it. The size that you need might be different for your vehicle, but for this Corolla, it is a 14mm. This is to get the bolt on your drain pan off, your oil pan I should say. So really just as simple as unscrewing it, letting the oil drain all the way out, screwing it back in, and filling your oil back up to whatever the manufacturer recommended amount is. And that's really it, aside from tools. Obviously you'll want something to get your vehicle propped up with. We're going to be using a jack and jack stands. Here's the jack stand I use. Obviously I'll have 2 of them because we're propping the front of the vehicle up. So we'll get one on each side just behind the front wheels. They have a lot of different options as far as height on them. And then these are weighted to 2 tons each. The vehicle itself doesn't even weigh 2 tons. I think it's a little over 3,000 pounds. So these will more than hold this vehicle specifically. The reason you want to use jack stands is because while a jack will lift your vehicle, they're not necessarily designed to keep the weight on. So you want something that you can rest the weight down onto just for your safety and the safety of the vehicle. It is just a regular commuter sedan, so not a lot of ground clearance. So for whatever reason the jack were to fail and I didn't have the jack stands, I wouldn't be making videos anymore, I guess is the nicest way I can put it. All this stuff is for purchase at whatever auto parts store you prefer. So just go in there, pick out your jack, your stands, your oil, tools, whatnot. They should be able to hook you up there. So without further ado, we'll get into the actual oil change. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things you want to look for, and then we'll wrap it up with, I guess, a summary of what we did and some things that you might want to look for after you do your change. Okay, so before we get into the actual oil change, one thing that I want to talk about is the weight of your oil. We talked weight. This is 0W20. The way you can find that out, what weight your vehicle needs, is by looking at the oil fill cap in your engine bay. So we've already popped the hood open. We see we have our plastic engine cover right here. We'll go over to the cap and we see that it is 0W20, SAA 0W20. If you can't find it here, it should be in your owner's manual, so you'll just flip through and find that. But basically that is the rating or the viscosity of the oil that you'll need at operating temperature. I think is how they measure that, but whatever the meaning is, just make sure you get the right weight. All right, we're going to go ahead and get the jack out of the trunk, crank it up, and get started. All right, one thing that I do want to point out while I'm under here. So you can see we have our jack here, our jack stand here. This is a 2¼ ton jack, which if you go back to the weight I talked about earlier, is more than enough for this vehicle. And then we have our jack stand. So right now we just have this side lifted. We're going to be doing the same thing on the other side here in a minute. But what you want to look for in vehicles like this is what's called your subframe. So a car, sedan, whatever, especially newer ones, aren't going to have an actual frame like you would see on a truck or an SUV. These have a subframe, so it's like a composite shell for the car, but kind of serves the same purpose. So this is where you'll want to place your jack and then place your jack stand, and this will be able to support the weight of the vehicle. So what we're going to do from here is we have our jack stand placed. So we're going to slide out, put our tool in right here to actually lower the jack, and then you'll see as I start to lower that the jack stand is going to support the weight of the vehicle. Okay, and that's getting the jack under. So pretty straightforward. And then you can see the weight of the vehicle is on that subframe there. So we're going to go over to the other side and do the same thing, and then we'll check back in. Alright, so one other thing that I wanted to mention real quick is how to actually catch the oil that you're draining and what to do with it afterwards. So you're going to want a container to actually drain your oil into, which is something like this. You can buy this from AutoZone, just as with all the other parts, and then there's a place right here to store the nut for your oil pan. This is my makeshift funnel, please don't make fun of it. And then this is the jug you're actually going to want to put your oil into after, depending on what kind of collection tray that you use. And what you're going to do with your oil is put in that jug, seal it up, and then take it to whatever auto parts store, again an AutoZone or O'Reilly's, whatever, and just let them know you have some old oil you want to recycle, and they're either going to take the jug, dump it, and give it back to you, or they're going to show you where their container is for that stuff, and you're going to take it back, dump it, and then take your container home. One other thing that I like to do whenever I'm making an oil change with the vehicle on jacks rather than a lift is kind of pre-stage all the tools and things that I'm going to need under the car. That way I'm not left under there just reaching for stuff. So you can see I already have my oil filter down there. I have my tool to get the filter housing off. I have my socket with a 14 millimeter, and then a couple wrenches here. One's 14, the other's just any given size that you want, just to help with some leverage in case anything's tight. And then I like to have some old rags laying around the garage. So these are just old chef's coats that I had from a job a long time ago that I'm going to use just to catch any oil drippage, help clean up my hands, and then just make the process cleaner as we go along. So really the last thing before we get into the car, some people say you can take off your fill cap before you go under, and that'll help drain the oil easier. I've never had an issue draining the oil, and I've never used that trick, but it's up to you. I'm just going to leave it for now, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are under the vehicle. You can see right here in front of me I have the bolt for my oil pan, and then your filter housing is going to be right here. Again, this is specific to my vehicle, so please do your research about where your stuff is and how to identify it, and once again what tools you need. It is going to be warm under here depending on how recently you've used your car. I just got done running a few errands, so my oil will come out easily, but it's also awfully warm under here, so I have a fan off to my side to help with that. So we'll go ahead and get started by taking this bolt out. So I'll get my light hung up right here, and then I'm going to grab my tools that I pre-staged, namely my ratchet with the 14 mil, and then we're going to make sure it's set to the right direction, and we're just going to pop it on, and hopefully with the grace of God get this loosened up. So depending on how tight you had it and how long it's been since you changed it, this thing can be pretty tight, so just have some patience. Alright, so you can see mine's pretty tight. Okay, so we got that initial bit of loosening on this, so now we're just going to make sure that our collection device is in the right spot, move any obstructions out of the way, and this is the fun part. So this is where we're going to try to get this out without getting oil all over our hands. So you're going to get a little bit on you, that's why we have a rag, right? But after you've loosened it enough, you're just going to be able to hand loosen it, okay? Really the ratchet should just be for that initial loosen. So we're going to go ahead and start to let this go. Again, make sure this is positioned appropriately. Because there's a sufficient amount of oil in here, it is going to kind of shoot forward at first and then slowly drip its way back. So again, make sure whatever device you're using to collect, it's positioned appropriately. So here we go. And it's already coming out, and there we go. Alright, so oil's hot, not terrible, didn't get it everywhere, so we're just going to set this in the appropriate spot on our collection device. We'll hang this back up so I don't keep flashing you guys with it. And I'm just going to clean this oil off my hand real quick. So just for reference, this isn't that bad as far as oil goes, okay? It's still pretty brown, it's not black, this is still healthy-ish oil, but you want to change for vehicles like this your oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I'm at the 5,000 mile mark right now, so it was about time. A little bit different for bigger vehicles, especially for diesels. So for example, in my truck, I'm only going to be changing that once like every 7,500 miles. Yeah, so take a look at what we're seeing right here. You can see the oil has mostly drained out and is starting to inch its way back, so I'll move this back a little bit, and we just have a little bit of excess right here. So I'm going to let that drain a minute longer, and then we're going to go up here to our filter and see if we can get that off. That tends to be what I struggle with the most, just because this tool is kind of cheap and flimsy, so we'll make it work. Alright, so you can see this is about drained out pretty much. So we're going to go ahead, before we forget, and pop our bolt back in. So that'll stop the flow right away. Hand tighten it as much as you can, then go back, grab your 14 mil or whatever size you're using, switch it over, and just give that a good tug, and you're good to go. You don't want to underdo it, you don't want to overdo it, just where it feels tight. It's going to sit in there and hold your oil like it should. Okay, now the fun part is getting the filter out. So like I said, it's a little bit different for this vehicle. What you're going to want to do, if I can get my light positioned how I want it, is just pop this on, right? And it should just fit on your ratchet like that, work the same way. So we're going to get up into here, depending on what oil filter type you have. There might be like a safety pin or something in there, but I broke mine a long time ago. The oil filter still stays in just fine. Again, I'm not a mechanic, so maybe one day it'll come back to bite me, but so far it's been working okay, so we're going to try to start working our magic on this. And of course, make sure your thing is still positioned correctly, because once you get this oil filter out, there'll be a little bit of residual oil in there also that will need to drain. Alright, so that's getting the oil filter out. So pretty straightforward on that. Try not to drip oil everywhere. You can just take your old oil filter and just pop it wherever. You're going to get oil on your hands, so sorry. Let's put that there and make a big mess. Okay. So now we have our actual housing for our oil filter off. We're also going to pop off this old O-ring. I don't really need that anymore. And then we're going to grab our new filter, which we have pre-staged. Okay, so you can see brand new, and then we also have our new O-ring right here, so we'll go ahead and get that out of its package. Okay, so what you can do, take a little bit of the new or old oil, doesn't matter. I'm just going to dip my finger in here, lube up this O-ring a little bit, and then go ahead and just slide it on your filter housing. Easier said than done. Okay, and then take your new filter, slide it in, and you're good to go. So we're going to get this back in there. Okay, once again, snug. Okay, not too tight, not too loose, just snug. If you have your safety pin, put it in at this time. If you don't, pray. Okay. Okay, so that's off. So we are done under here. So to recap, we drained our oil into the collection device here. We put our bolt back in. We took our old oil filter out, let it drain, put the new one in, put the housing back together, and that's it. So now we're going to vacate out from under here. We're going to go up top to the engine, grab our new oil, and show you guys what the rest of the process looks like. Alright, so now we are back up top. So I've left the car jacked up just so once I can put this oil in, I can see if there are any leaks or anything I might have missed. So you can see we have our oil, we have our funnel, makeshift or legitimate. And then I just have a rag here also just to help get this lid off. Sometimes it's kind of a pain in the ass, as it is now. It also gets really hot. All right. So we'll screw that off. Cap. Okay. And for this also, you can take this little plastic cover off your engine. That's all this top part is. If you want it maybe to be a little less mess free, but no worries here. We're just gonna go ahead and pop in our funnel with cobwebs on it because it's been a minute since I changed the oil. And then we're going to fill her up. So again, for this engine, 4 quarts. If you're lucky, you'll get an engine oil that actually has measurement on the back of it. But either way, once you pour in what you think is correct, you're going to want to check it with your dipstick after you give it some time to settle. So we'll go ahead and pour this in and then come back to it. Alright, so we have 4 quarts of oil, new oil, in the engine. Now we're going to kind of let it sit, settle down at the bottom for a minute. That way we can get an accurate measurement on our dipstick. So take your old rag, pull out the dipstick. And just right away wipe it, alright? Don't take that first look. Slide your dipstick back in. Make sure you guide the dipstick in, that way you don't bend it. Put it all the way in. Give it a second, let it measure. Alright. Now it's kind of hard to see in this light, but the thick part of the oil that you'll see does stop within between these 2 dots right here. So that's how you know you're good, is if you're somewhere in between these 2 dots. Close to this one, you probably have a little too little. Close to this one, you probably have a little too much. So just make sure you fill appropriately. All right, and once you have your new oil in, go ahead and start your cleanup. So we'll get the funnel taken out. You can just set that here with your old oil and whatnot. Yep, that looks good. All right, and then take your fill cap, put that back on. Again, snug, not too tight. And that's it. So a very simple procedure. We'll go ahead and get all this stuff cleaned out of the engine bay. We'll get the hood closed up. Alright, so hood's closed up. We'll take one more look underneath. And it doesn't look like we have anything dripping, any weird leaks or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and take it off the jack stands in the same order we put it up. So you'll want to jack the jack all the way up to the car. Release your jack stands and then lower it easily back down with the jack. Then we're going to take it for a little drive, see if we have any issues, any weird lights, bring it back, check for leaks, and we'll be done. All right, so we're here in the seat of the Corolla. Excuse the trash on the floorboard. So what we're gonna do now is take the key, and we're actually going to turn off the maintenance light that has come on to remind me that it's time for the oil change. Before I do that though, I'm gonna go ahead and put the key in the ignition, turn it into auxiliary, and I'm just gonna pop it in neutral and release the parking brake. Please only do this if you're on a flat surface. The reason I do it is because the car does shift a little bit whenever you get it up on the jacks, and it can be a very unpleasant experience. Switching it from parking gear with the handbrake on to a drive gear, you'll get a really big jolt. So we're gonna go ahead and bring her into neutral, and then pop with your foot on the brake, pop the handbrake down, and then you will see a small shift. See the door budge a little bit. So now we're good, we're flat, we're even. We're gonna go ahead and turn the key back off, put it back in park, turn the key off, and we're gonna take it out for a second so it doesn't beep. And then you're gonna wanna pull out your owner's manual if you have it. If you don't, it's a quick lookup online. And we're actually gonna turn to a page where it tells you how to clear the maintenance light. Okay, so we are here at that page. So you can see the first step is to turn the engine start-stop switch or engine switch off with the trip meter A shown. So we'll take our keys and we'll go ahead and pull up trip meter A here. You can see it's been a little over 5,000 since that change. That's how I like to track it with the trip meter. You don't really use that for anything else. Okay, so trip meter A is shown. So we'll come back. While pressing the trip meter reset button, turn engine start-stop switch or engine switch on. All right, so we're gonna hold the button and turn on our switch. You can see when we do that, you get some flashing lights, and then boom. So your trip will go to 0, the maintenance light will turn off, and you'll be good to go, I'll say. So from here, we're going to take a drive. All right, so we started up the Corolla. You see we're idling good. Our engine tip's still a little low, so we're gonna be idling at about 1,000 RPM. You can see no weird lights, no engine light, no maintenance light, no oil light. We just have our seatbelt and our door open light. What I'd recommend is just go ahead and bookmark that page in your owner's manual if you have it. That way you don't have to go searching for it every time. And then just keep that in your glove box. So we'll take a little drive and then come back, check for leaks, and call it a day. All right, for the driving portion, I like to take my vehicle on just whatever my neighborhood roads are, some back roads. And then if you have the opportunity afforded to you, try to take it to a highway or an interstate or some other higher speed road. This way you just kind of hit all the rev ranges of your vehicle. So everything from just kind of cruising rev range like this to, you know, higher, like 4,000 RPM depending on your car. Obviously for different vehicles that might differ, but whatever you're kind of getting on the highway rev range is. So we're going to make sure that it's clear here, and then we'll see what the Corolla gets up to with just a regular highway acceleration. Alright, back in the driveway, we are up to our normal operating temperature and our regular idle range, just under 1,000 RPM. We'll go ahead and hop out and look under the bottom of the vehicle for any leaks. And doesn't look like we got anything going on under here, so I will consider that a success. If you guys, like I said, have any questions about oil change process, I can answer for the car, the truck, and then I'm about to do my wife's vehicle as well. So please leave your questions, comments in the area below the video. If you guys have any recommendations or suggestions, things I could have done different, or just things about the channel, stuff you'd like to see, please let me know. And that'll be it. See ya.